All right. Here we are. Another day, another year, well, 16 days into 2025, and we have our next balance pass for Warhammer 40K. So I was actually a little confused. I think a few people were as to why they did the balanced pass in December. They usually do balance passes in January. So basically you'll have the for at least from the they appear to do for the schedule, and they've changed this again. But the original plan was that they were going to have a balanced pass at the beginning of the year, and then a big season pass at in June, the end of June, and then halfway in between both, they would do some points updates. But they're going to be doing this a little bit more frequently. It looks like they're going to be try to be a little bit more responsive. My big complaint about this is their balance passes have always felt like they lag a bit behind, because basically what has to happen is they have to perceive a problem, and then they have to figure out the solution to the problem. They have to spend sometimes the designers have to get together, have a meeting, and go, okay, what are the most important things we need to address, and how are we going to address it? And that can take time. In the case of some of the big balance changes, it seems like there's often been even a as much as a 90-day lag between a specific problem and the solution to it. A lag long enough that sometimes the problem actually fixes itself, because it turns out that problem wasn't actually that much of a problem, and the meta just kind of adjusted around it. So this is how we ended up, I think, with things like Drukhari getting nerfed twice in a row, when Drukhari aren't that big of a deal. Like, they were never unbalanced. Like, they really never were. I know that a lot of players have like complained sometimes about like Drukhari's mobility and the ability to do things like elf jail and stuff like that, but the simple fact of the matter is when you actually look at Drukhari's numbers and you look at how many people are playing and who is actually bringing this, it's you have specific players like Archon Skari who have been playing Drukhari for literally decades almost, and they just are they know the faction inside and out, and they know how to play. They not only know how to play Drukhari, but they know how to play 40k at a very, very high level. But then, those same players, they go up against other players of similar caliber, and they can't get the results. So that is the first problem I had, was like this kind of like the way the balance changes are going to happen today. Is it's very obvious that these balance changes were made in response to the Grot misdetachment. And I've already heard some complaints about one in particular, that again, when you actually look at tournament performance, and again, this is very much a case of we don't have the data yet. Like, there are going to be people who are going to look at tournament performance since all the Grot detachments, since the new year started. So we've got like basically you've got like December, which was there were tournaments in that time, but it was still relatively a dead period. And now we're going into LVO, so we've got a few more tournaments that have happened, but it's still not enough data to determine what the state of the balance is. So a lot of people have been knee-jerking on specific detachments in Grotmas. And some of them have been over-focused on by the community, aka Star Shatter, because Star Shatter is a good, strong detachment. It is not the best detachment that came out for Grotmas. I'm sorry, it just isn't. While other detachments, aka Tactical Brigade, which may have actually been the best detachment that came out for Grotmas, have been completely ignored by the community. Except for the Orc players, who have been loving it. The Orc players have been having a ball with Tactical Brigade. So, and this is not the first time and likely won't be the last time we see some knee-jerk balance changes in response to community knee-jerking. So the community has their knee-jerk response, and then they outcry, and then GW has to respond. The most famous example, of course, of this was Leagues of Votann. And now, again, Leagues of Votann was very, very strong on release. They were not as strong as Eldar. They were not as strong as. They were not even close to as strong as Tyranids. Okay. Did the community knee jerk and force GW to nerf Eldar before their codex came out? No. Even though there were a lot of people who were saying, hey, Eldar is going to be a problem. But there were also a lot of course, there were a lot of fans for Eldar at the time that were pushing back, going, "Oh no, it's not going to be that bad." So there was that clash that was happening, and so GW didn't know, which side. So they're, oh, well, we'll wait and see the numbers. Same thing with Tyranids. There was that clash. Oh, it's not going to be that bad, and then no. Tyranids was so freaking broken on release. It's not even funny. The only thing you heard any of the Tyranid fans going is like, "Oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have access to Crusher Stampede." That is basically like what we saw. And of course, Tyranids didn't get nerfed, and they required literally, 3/4 of a year, three full cycles of nerfs in order to get Tyranids in line. And then by that time, GW hit them with the nuke from orbit, and then they were completely and totally broken as a faction and in the opposite direction. But Votann, hey, Judge. Votann comes out, and Votann doesn't have that community because they're brand new. So all we get is the one side going, "Oh, they're overpowered, they're broken, they're so broken, you have to do something, you have to nerf Vote." And the internet loses its shit over Votann. And yeah, Votann, again, they were overpowered, they were part of the codex creep, but the best players in the world have tried unnerfed Votann into Tyranids, into Eldari, and yeah, no, they were not more broken than those two codexes were. But which codex gets the nerf? The one that didn't have the side that was rooting back saying otherwise. Now, Necrons are a very popular faction, but the simple fact of the matter is Necrons also have been doing very, very well recently. They have been a strong faction in 40K for a long time now. Basically, since they came out, since their first codex came out for 10th edition, Necrons have been doing really, really well. So I think there is this perception from the community that giving Necrons any new strong tools to play with is a bad thing. But, Necrons have taken nerfs. And basically all Star Shatter has done is it has given Necrons a new tool set. But again, it's a strong detachment. It's a good detachment. It's not as strong as people think it is. I'm basically going to be paraphrasing Art of War and their faction tier list right now when I say this, but essentially what competitive players are seeing is that Necrons with Star Shatter can get on the board and they can do the damage if you let them. Remember, these are usually very big models that they're putting on the board. These are models that have to maneuver around terrain quite a bit. And so if you stage in front in the open, in front of these big models, they're going to blow you to pieces. But if you respect the detachment, if you go, okay, well, Star Shatter is a strong detachment that's capable of doing a lot of damage very quickly. If you give them that respect and you properly, maintain your cover against it, you properly, you don't expose yourself to bad firing lines, you make sure you're trading properly when you do expose yourself, well, Star Shatter is capable of trading up better, but the end result is that Star Shatter isn't capable of making as much advantage of its damage potential as it could be if you weren't respecting the detachment. And so what ends up happening is because you've got all of these big models on the Necron side of the line, and because you've probably got a lot more diverse set of tools available to you, because most of the other popular detachments are those kind of tool set detachments that allow you to field a much more organic looking force with many more a much greater variety of units. Then essentially the Necron player will start finding they're falling back in score because they can't do their secondaries. There's a decent chance you're also pulling ahead in primary, and even if they try to secret mission it, the Star Shatter Arsenal doesn't give them the tools to actually run the secret missions. So the end result is that, yeah, the Star Shatter can often do a lot of damage to your army, but you still win on the points. So that is at least one thing that I've heard a lot of complaints about. And so we're gonna, in case of spoilers, we're gonna see some nerfs to Star Shatter because GW did knee-jerk nerfs to the community's response to knee-jerk nerfs. Now, there's one thing that does probably need to be changed. This is currently up for debate, but I'd like you to hear my logic on this. So, for all of 10th edition, we have had the Blood Angels painted blue problem. We have had basically this idea where because you no longer have to declare a chapter when it comes to your rules, as far as like, what you can use basically any Space Marine models to play in any chapter. There's no reason not to use whatever the most powerful Space Marine rule set currently is. And again, for all of 10th edition, for the most part, Ultramarines have been a good, strong army. They have been a good, solid 40k army that is capable of playing 40k at a high level. They just haven't been Dark Angels, or they haven't been Space Wolves, or they haven't been Black Templars. And there was even a brief period at the very start of the edition where they weren't Death Watch. Now, of course, Blood Angels are one of the more powerful ways to play. And so, people were basically playing mostly Blood Angels. And basically the only people who were playing any of the other chapters that aren't currently the strongest way to play Space Marines are the people who are the true adherents to those chapters. And to the point where we do still even have some Imperial Fist players out in the wild, who were running around with Imperial Fist, even though they basically had nothing. And the reason the divergent chapters could pull so far ahead of the core Codex Space Marines, was twofold. The first is they had access to more units. This was especially true for Space Wolves, Dark Angels, and Blood Angels. It wasn't as much of a thing with Black Templars, except at the very beginning of the edition where the Black Templars had their special vehicles. And then shortly before the last balance pass, not the December one, but the October points pass, Black Templar sword brethren lists started becoming a really big thing. So, but basically the deeper the divergent chapters unit list was, the more they could do, the more potential they had to just find cool tech in their lists to come out and do crazy things that the tournament scene wasn't capable of doing anything about. The other thing is every divergent chapter had at least one more detachment. And as of last December, they now all have at least 2 more detachments. So if you're playing a divergent chapter that's got their codex, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, then you've got 4 additional detachments that you can pick from for trying to set up your army list and set up your tech. And if you are playing one of the other divergent chapters, with the exception of Death Watch, which now only has their 1 still, then you've got 2 more. So Black Templars have 2 more detachments, Space Wolves have 2 more detachments. And it should be pointed out that for the most part, you're going to be fielding Champions of Rust if you're going to go with the Space Wolf detachment. You're not gonna field Champions of the Wolf. And for the same thing for Black Templars, you're probably going to field Righteous Crusade, although the gap between Righteous Crusade and I forget what the name of their Grotmus detachment was. The gap isn't as big there, but they're very similar playstyles. So you're going to go with the one that you've likely got more reps into, and that has that little bit more power, that little bit more oomph to it. Pardon me a moment. So in response, still got a little bit of a tickle. It's probably my mustache. In response to the fact that Divergent chapters had so many advantages over Core Codex Space Marines, whether you're playing Ultramarines or which is again with a good solid army, or whether or not you were playing one of the other Core Codex chapters. We got the Oath of Moment change. So now, if you are playing a Core Codex chapter, you get +1 to wound when you have your Oath target. Or at least, that was what felt like the intention was. When you read all of the balanced data slate articles and everything about what they were talking about for how they were trying to fix things, that is what appears to be their intention. Now, again, there's the whole rules as intended, rules as written argument. But again, when we look at the actual written words that the balance team and the 40K team were writing in these articles, the intention was to take Ultramarines, Iron Hands, Imperial Fists, Raven Guard, White Scars, take those Core Codex chapters and lift them up to try to bring them on level with the Divergent chapters. But the actual written text of the rule is that if you do not have any units in your army that have the Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Black Templars, Death Watch, with the exception of Imperial Agents, I seem to recall that is written in there, Space Wolves, if your army does not have any of those units, then you get the bonus to Oath. Well, what's the difference? Why is that writing different? Well, it means you can make a Space Marine army that plays Blood Angels or plays Space Wolves, but does not have the other units in it. And the end result is you get the new boosted Oath of Moment. And the big thing people are comboing with this, and I say this like this is a huge deal, like lots of people are doing this, but there's only a handful of people who've been playing with this tech. The vast majority of Space Marine players have either used this as an opportunity to play their favorite chapters, or they have been playing Ultramarines, in all honesty. With the full knowledge and understanding that more than likely this is going to get patched out. This is going to get fixed. But there's been a handful of people who have been taking something like Inner Circle Companions or Righteous Crusaders. And the big one, of course, is the... what's the name of the one that replaced Sons of Sanguinius? Liberator Assault Group. They've been taking Liberator Assault Group, and now they've also got boosted Oath of Moment. And the reason in particular why Liberator looks like such great tech is if you are not on the charge, well, you're +1 to wound against your Oath target. If you are on the charge, your +2 strength on your melee weapons and +1 to wound on your oath target. That basically means that a squad of, like, say, for example, Sandguard can charge into something like a Land Raider or a Knight, and they can wound on 3s or even 2s. And so that's a huge swing in power for that detachment. And it is my understanding that that is not being patched out. Unless they have further updated things, it is my understanding they have not patched that out. Now, whether or not LVO will allow such army lists to exist, we'll have to wait and see. I think at this point, though, we've got all of the rulings we're going to get from LVO. By the way, LVO, of course, is today. It started today. So more than likely, anyone who brought that list is going to be allowed to bring that list. So it feels like an unintended consequence, and it feels like yet another way in which divergent chapters can potentially leap ahead and be more dominant, more powerful than the core codex chapters. Now, I am purely against this from the ideological perspective. Okay, I think that, well, I've said this before. I think that all of the Space Marine chapters should be like the way they do Chaos. Okay, I think if you play Space Wolves, you should have a Space Wolf codex with your Space Wolf units in that codex, and that's what you get to play with. You do this will now, of course, this would mean that Space Wolves players would no longer have to buy Codex Space Marines, and that's probably one of the reasons they don't want to do that. And the other reason, of course, is this would require a lot of balancing, a lot of reprinting of data sheets. But still, this would allow us, like, especially with a chapter like Space Wolves, a heavy intercessor or an intercessor in Space Wolves is going to fight and battle a lot differently than an Ultramarines intercessor is. And the same is mostly true. And as you get closer to the less divergent chapters like Blood Angels and Dark Angels is essentially just Codex Space Marines plus. Their data sheets would be more in harmony, but like the more divergent chapters, Death Watch, Space Wolves, etc., they're going to use those tools a lot differently than core Codex chapters are. So that's how they should be represented. And that would also allow for like different points costs, different balancing issues. The dev team would have more tools available to them. So that's what I would like to see, but we're not going to see that. We're definitely not going to see this edition. I doubt we'll see it in 11th edition. I think 11th edition, they're probably going to be doing a lot more patches and bug fixing to get 10th edition working the way that they were. I'm almost certain 11th edition is going to be like one of the edition parade editions where it's basically 10th edition plus. So for those of you who don't know, you had Rogue Trader, which was really its own thing, and it was more of a skirmish game than it was an army game. It was almost a role-playing game in many ways, and that's why it eventually did become a role-playing game, starting, of course, with Fantasy Flight, and then of course, the most recent Rogue Trader video game. And then, of course, we also got a Kill Team Rogue Trader, although I believe that Kill Team has been rotated out. So that is how 40K started. Then we got 2nd edition, and 2nd edition was the first time we actually had it as a full army game. Technically, Epic existed before 2nd edition did, I believe. But 2nd edition is how a lot of us, old grognards came in. And then you had 3rd edition, which completely and totally changed the rules. And then basically every edition up to 7th was just tweaking 3rd edition. They were all 3rd edition plus, essentially. And then you got 8th edition, and then 9th edition was 8th edition plus. And now we've got 10th edition, and I'm expecting 11th edition to be 10th edition plus. So basically time to take all of the new rules changes and balance changes and maybe a few other things and codify them in an all new core rules book. Hopefully we will still get a core rules PDF. That would be very much appreciated. But we'll have to wait and see. We do know that GW does love selling us their big expensive books. So I'm not expecting that to get fixed anytime soon. So in lieu of that getting fixed, I would like to see this changed. But that, again, that's purely philosophical. My gut reaction, and again, we'll see more as more players play around with this tech. My gut reaction is that this is not going to be a stronger way to play Space Marines than Ultramarines currently is. I think Ultramarines, like, yeah, Liberator Assault is a very strong detachment. I don't see how Liberator Assault is stronger with the +1 to wound off of moment than it is without it, but you've got Sangard and Mephiston and Dante and the Sanguinor. It's like, I don't see how that's the case. And especially Space Wolves. Space Wolves have such a deep list of data sheets to pull from. There's no way that Champions of Rust with +1 to wound on your oath target is stronger than Champions of Rust with access to the Space Wolf index. Like, that's just not happening. All right. But anyway, that's kind of the state of things. And again, I'm not going to pull out. Now, normally when I do one of these as a written one, I pull up all of the previous stats. I'm not doing that today because, again, those stats don't mean anything. The meta has not settled. You really, like, I cannot emphasize this enough. A month of tournament data is not enough data, and we do not have a month of tournament data yet. Okay, yes, we have some of the early Grotmus attachments have obviously been in the wilds for months now, including Star Shatter. But the vast majority of those detachments have not been in the wilds for a month. So, well, I guess I shouldn't say the vast majority. Literally half of them. Literally half of them have not been in the wild that long. But a month is not enough. You need some time for the meta to settle. Once you get those first, that first months of data, and as the players start reacting to the meta and start trying to predict and react where things are going, that is when you will see what is going to happen. Okay, that is when you see what the actual meta is going to look like. And even then, like I said, as I've said in previous things that I've said in my Tumblr, previous coverage of balance changes, there is usually once a meta has settled, you will eventually enter into an experimental phase where some of the better players will start looking for new tech to play around with. That's when we ended up with, for example, the Black Templar Horde list that came out. So I personally think that GW is doing these balance passes too quickly. And I think any reaction on the internet to these, there's always said there's sometimes going to be something that is just obviously broken. But even then, I think the internet called its shot wrong, because I think the most broken detachment right now is Tactical Brigade, and maybe Slaanesh might be on the same level. So I think a lot of people looked at this. A lot of people look at just the detachment roll, and that's where they get their idea for how powerful a faction is. As they look at just that first rule, that first paragraph, and they either go, "Oh, this rule is stupid. No one's going to play this detachment. This detachment is weak and broken." Or they look at that rule and go, "Oh, that rule is busted. This detachment is so overpowered. We need to get it nerfed." You got to take it all. Got to take all of it. To see whether or not a detachment is going to actually do anything. All right, let's scroll down to some featured news real quick. I'm going to take a look at the Heresy Thursday. I've already looked at a lot of this already because I did look at this yesterday. So I've looked, for example, at the new AOS Joy Toys. I really like these Joy Toy figures. I really do. I kind of want to collect them, but that's again money above and beyond 40K, and I already don't have enough money to, get the 40K hobby where I want it to be. But we will look at Heresy Thursday. Get villainous was the traitor Herald Consul. Ooh. Now, this is almost certainly Finecast, which is one of the ways we get all of that detail in here. But remember, Finecast, unfortunately, is also very brittle. But yeah, so we got a Sons of Horus in their original Lunar Wolves livery, but of course with the Eye of Horus. I do get a kick out of like just the idea of power armor with chainmail. It really gives the vibe, that whole crusading legion vibe. It's such a silly notion. There have to be a better way to do this, but of course also the Lunar Wolves were from a very barbaric world. So if I remember correctly, that was a Ganger world with where the Lunar Wolves came from, Cathonia. And then we've got them painted up in a couple of different liveries, including some of the more kind of like middle ground livery for World Eaters, where it's like you've started seeing the red come in, but we still got a lot of the original white World Eaters livery. And then we got Emperor's Children and Night Lords. That's Night Lords blue. Did Night Lords use white in their livery at all? In their color scheme? Well, either way, I think this is a cool model. I love the Heresy models for the most part. I've had some criticism of some of the paint jobs I've seen, because in my opinion, just some of the color schemes are a little bit one note, but these are all really good. These are all fantastic. They're taking advantage of the fact that you've got this transitional period that these models can potentially exist in. We're the Sons of Horus now, but we haven't changed our armor all that much. Even though Horus is now wearing just pure black armor. We're the World Eaters, or if you prefer, the Eaters of Worlds. So we're going to have the blood-soaked armor on now, but we've still got some of that white in there. This is the only one where I'm like, huh? I don't remember this from the lore at all. All right. To the downloads. Okay. Where do we want to start? So a lot of these are probably just going to be the new updated things. So let's take a look. We've definitely got a balanced data slate. We've got the Grotmist detachments, facts, and FAQs in errata. We've got some index card errata. And then we've got an MFM. I think the MFM is just guard, but we'll find out. We've got a Tau Empire FAQ. I think I remember hearing about this. We've got our first FAQ for Astra Militarum. Now, I do not have that codex. I do need to get that codex, but right now it is only available in the Death Korps of Krieg box set, and I cannot pick that box set up right now. That is not within my means. I did pick up a bunch of skulls, though. I also finally have the Pariah Nexus deck. I finally got it. All right. So I think we start with the balanced data slate. That's usually where I start. So We will pull up the balanced data slate. We will pull up Grotmis, the index cards, and I'll of course be going through and downloading these all separately. Let's grab all of the FAQs. I hope they boosted this somehow because this really needs boosting. And then the MFM. All right, so let's start with the balanced data slate. This is for January 2025. Again, we're looking for this red text. And this is what we're looking for. So we're not getting any changes here. All right, faction rules. Adeptus Sororitas, no new changes. Adeptus Custodes, no new changes. Adeptus Mechanicus, nothing. Eldari, Dark Astra Militarum. Now, one thing to note is this should now, since this is now an updated Astra Militarum datasheet, except that this, I thought this got fixed in the codex. I thought this already got fixed in the codex, so maybe this still needs to be updated. But this does still seem to suggest that Leontis now is still nerfed, because in the codex, Leontis can issue orders to 3 units, and they're now saying 3 regiment units and 3 squadron units. So my read on this is that this is probably still the way it's supposed to be played now. They still only want Leontis to order regiment and squadron units, not any unit. So sad day for your Auxilius, sad day for your Titanic units. Nothing for Blood Angels. Okay. For Demonic Pact, Denizens of the Warp Stratagem, delete restriction section. Where'd it go? This should be pinned. There it is. I'm like, this should be pinned. However, just because it's pinned doesn't mean Windows doesn't move or maneuver them around. All right. Chaos Demons. All right, we're looking for the Denizens of the Warp Stratagem. A unit targeted by this stratagem is not eligible to declare a charge in the same turn. Oh boy. Yeah, that's a nice little buff for demons. So basically what they've done is by the balanced data slate, this is now nerfed to 6 inches, but now you can declare a charge. So yeah, that's huge. So that means you can get a 6-inch charge out of Deep Strike with your demons. That's huge. So demons were already looking pretty good, guys. Like, demons were looking good. I was really, really high up on the Zinch detachment. I think there's some really interesting tech in there. The problem I'm hearing from some of the early results, and again, early result, take them with a grain of salt. The problem I'm hearing from the early result is that Zinch doesn't have the power. It just doesn't have the raw shooting in order to take advantage of all of its tricks. Whereas Slaanesh does have the melee power it needs to take advantage of all of its tricks. So all right, Dark Angels, Mounted Strategist Enhancement. I do not have this book, so I have to look this up. This is for a company of hunters. Actually, company of hunters, I think, is the Grotmus. Is that the Grotmus? No, Lion's Talons is the Grotmus. Or Lion's Blade. All right. So mounted strategist enhancement. Ravenwing model only, you can re-roll advance and charge rolls made for the bearer's unit. I think they already made that change. Because it's even in the grain. Is it the... I even remember seeing this change before. I even remember seeing that change before. Well, it looks like my source is already updated, so either way. So I don't know what it was before, but you can reroll advance and charge rolls made for the bearer's unit. Seems like it was. I think they probably, like, maybe it was reroll advance rolls originally, or just reroll charge rolls. But that seems a lot like what they had done before. Pardon me. This is pretty big, though. Black Knights and the command squad now get dev wounds. That's pretty big. So again, a little bit of a buff. I think these are both a little bit of a buff to Dark Angels. I could have sworn maybe it's in the last balance data slate. I could have sworn they changed that. They changed that already because they had to fix it because of how they changed some things in Company of Hunters. It was only a month ago. You'd think I might remember. Nope. Let's see, Master of Maneuver. This is Mounted Strategist. They've changed the... Oh, yeah, Master Maneuver. Oh! They changed Master of Maneuver last time. And now they're changing Mounted Strategist this time. So that means Deathwing has access to 2 reroll advance and charge rolls. What? We make a little bit of a mistake there. That doesn't feel like I think what they were going for. Note that the Master of Maneuver change is gone. So that, I guess, would mean that Master of Maneuver is back to being what it was before. But unfortunately, I don't have access to what it was before right now. And again, I don't have the Dark Angels Codex. or I should say codex supplement. So yeah, weird. I think what's going on is they're changing Master of Maneuver back to what it said, and they're changing Mounted Strategist to this, but all right. And then they're getting that buff there. They don't look changed. I'm expecting these to potentially see some balance changes in the future, but they're leaving them alone for now. Okay. It looks like they're not changing any of the Grotmus detachments in this document. It looks like all of the changes are going to be in another document, which we've already got open. That's the Grotmus one. Tau Empire Bonded Heroes Detachment Roll. Change to each time a Tau Empire battlesuit model from your army makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within 12 inches, improve the strength characteristic of that attack by 1. If that attack targets a unit within 9 inches, I think this was 6 inches before, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1 as well. So what I'm pretty sure what they did here is, so Ret Cadre has that stratagem that allows them to drop in within 3. They changed that to dropping in within 6. This allows them to still drop in within 6 and get that bonus. I'm pretty sure this is from Ret Cadre. So yeah, this is a nice buff to Tau, and they did kind of need it after that nerf. On the one hand, I do think that for the most part, with the exception of maybe a handful of units, like the Moloch, please give it to the Moloch. I just want the Moloch to actually do what it's supposed to do for once. You can still do, for example, though, with Sanguinor still gets his roll, but yeah, for the most part, we don't want models dropping in within 3. It's just so easy to break board control when you've got models that can drop in within 3. All right. And I think that's the data slate. So we got a buff to Tau. We got a change to Dark Angels that I don't think is currently being represented in my source. If I understand correctly, I think that Master of Maneuver is going back to what it was before, and Mounted Strategist is now becoming the reroll advance and charges. I think that's what they are intending to do, because they took the change to Master of Maneuver out of the balanced data slate. So I think they accidentally changed the wrong enhancement for the Company of Hunters. So that is, I think, what is the intention, is that now Mounted Stratagem is changed, Master Maneuver goes back to what it was before. And for all I know, because again, I don't have the codex, for all I know, that Master Maneuver is reroll advance and charge rolls. All right, but I'm pretty sure, given the last change in the balanced data slate, that it's not. All right, so that's our balanced data slate. Let's look at the Grotmus detachments. Now here I can just pull them up. All right, Adeptus Custodes Solar Spearhead, Veteran of the Cataphractii, or Cataphractii. Adeptus Custodes Infantry or Adeptus Custodes Mounted Model only. In your command phase, select one friendly Adeptus Custodes vehicle or Adeptus Custodes mounted unit within 6 inches of the bearer. Until the start of your next command phase, that unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. So I think this was the movement phase originally, and now they're changing it to command phase, so you do have to call your shot. So that's always a little bit of a nerf. This one we knew was coming. We knew that this was coming. In your command phase, select one or more Adeptus Mechanicus units from your army. So you can't Halo Screed Allied Knights, even though like it is one of those things where kind of in the lore they might be able to do that, but they want detachments to change to be affected by detachments. They want the detachment to affect the faction that the detachment is under. Chaos Knights, one friendly damned unit. You cannot sacrifice your enemy's cultists. That should go without saying, but Deathwatch Errata, the Talonstrike Kill Team Hand Flamer is a pistol now. Same thing with the Deathwatch Armory, it's a pistol now. And the Fortis Kill Team Astartes Chainsword is a 3+ weapon skill. And we have an FAQ, so we have our first FAQ for a Grotmist detachment. If you are using the Black Spear Task Force, do all Adeptus Astartes unit gain access to mission tactics, or only the datasheets with mission tactics listed on their faction abilities? And the answer is only the datasheets with the mission tactics listed on their faction abilities. That is how detachment rules have always worked. I do not know where the confusion was there. If you do not have reanimation protocols, you do not get to reanimate. If you did not have really AdMech's right here. If you did not have Doctrinas, you did not get to use Doctrina imperatives on any of the Conquer imperative or Defender or Bulwark imperative on the on your models. That is how it's always worked. So yes, you do need to actually be using your kill teams in order to gain access to mission tactics. So yeah, it is. Sorry, but they did not say Adeptus Astartes infantry. All right, Necrons. All right, Arata, Star Shatter Arsenal Demanding Leader. Change to Necron model only. In your command phase, select one friendly Necron vehicle or Necron mounted unit, excluding Titanic units within 6 inches of the bearer till the start of your next command phase. That unit is eligible to shoot and turn record call back. So same nerf they did to add to Custodes. Star Shuttle Arsenal Merciless Reclamation is now 2 CP, and Unyielding Forms is now 2 CP. And Star Shuttle Arsenal Reactive Reposition is now a D6 inch. That is a massive nerf, especially for a vehicle unit. So they really did hit Star Shatter pretty hard. So 2 CP strats are, and what I'm literally going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pull up Star Shatter, the newly written Star Shatter, and let's take a look at it with these changes. Okay. So once again, each time a Necron model from your army makes an attack that targets a unit within range of one or more objective markers, add 1 to the hit roll. So you're +1 to hit when trying to fire on a unit or try to claim a objective in melee. In addition, ranged weapons equipped by Necron vehicles and Necron mounted models, excluding Titanic models from your army, have the Assault ability. So this is, again, fantastic faction roll. So we then combine that with Dread Majesty, which is reroll a hit roll of 1, reroll a wound roll of 1. And while this does not stack with the Silent King, you can have an Overlord or Command Barge and the Silent King, and you can split up into 2 Death Stars and have that. Miniaturized Nebuloscope, ranged weapons equipped by the model in the bearer's unit having Norse cover. Necron model only. In your command phase, select one friendly Necron vehicle or Necron mounted unit, 6 inches barrel until the start of command phase. That needs to shoot and fall back. It's only 10 points, so it's still fantastic. Chrono Impedance Fields. Necron model only. In your command phase, select one friendly Necron vehicle or Necron mounted unit within 6 inches of the bearer until the start of your next command phase. Each time an attack is allocated to the model in that unit, subtract 1 for the damage characteristic. This is still a really good detachment roll. These are still really good enhancements. This is still a good detachment. I'm almost certain. But 2 CP strats are Always an ask, especially with vectors around. Okay, so Merciless Relation, your shooting phase, 1 Necron unit, excluding Titanic. Till the end of the phase, each time a model in your moon makes an attack, if the attack is within range of 1 or more objective markers, add +1 to wound. So you've already likely got you've got +1 to hit. You've already likely got some Death Star. So this is, you really need it to die. Now, is 2 CP for +1 to wound too much? Probably, honestly. You're really going to need to spend this CP in order to... You're really going to need to take something down in order to justify spending 2 CP on this. But combined with all of the others, that is a lot of, that's potentially a lot of value you're getting out of here. Again, Dimensional Tunnel, that lets you move through terrain. Unyielding Forms. 1 Necron vehicle or Necron mounted unit from your armies with subcute target 1 or attacks until the end of phase. Each time an attack targets a model in your unit if the strength characteristic. So 2 CP for new transhuman. This is one you're really going to have to need it again. So Endless Servitude, reactivating your protocols, reactive repositioning is now D6. So yeah, this one is normally, this is actually perfectly fine. This is not a nerf. This is bringing things. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a nerf. Let's face it. But this is what it should be. It should have been either you make a normal move up to 6 inches or whatever it was before for 2 CP, or it's 1 CP for a D6. That's kind of the standard. This is still a fantastic stratagem. They may have nerfed this stratagem, but it's still very good. And then Chrono Shift, your movement phase, Necron vehicle until the end of phase. If your unit advances, do not make an advance roll. Instead, you just flat out 6 inches. Again, you got Assault 2, so that's fantastic. Yeah. They really did nerf these two. But this is still a good detachment, guys. This is still a good detachment. Necrons are still fine. I know that that's going to be like a hot take for a lot. But just look at all of the rules in this detachment. This is still a good detachment. Yeah. I do think it wasn't as overpowered as people thought it was. So this has gone from being a S tier detachment to being an A or B tier detachment. And I'm probably pretty sure it's still an A tier detachment. So it was really good before. It's still really good. Sorry, that's my opinion on this one. Hot take, I know, but yeah. All right, so that's Necrons. That's the Star Shatter. Thousand Suns. Hex Warp Thrallband Empowered Manifestation. Change to Thousand Suns model only. While the bearer's unit is wholly within your army's flow of magic, you can add 6 inches to the range of psychic abilities the bearer has that specify. So before you were forced to, I cannot remember what rule that some Thousand Sun players were pointing out where it was actually detrimental to have this. But yeah, it's there were a couple of rules where this was detrimental, and or I think it was literally just one rule specifically where it was detrimental. But now you do not have to. So that does not fix this detachment. This detachment has so many other things that are wrong with it, but that does not fix this detachment. Honestly, like, you want to talk about, again, there is just this overwhelming feeling that GW has no intention to treat agents of the Imperium as a real army. And this is yet more, because by far, even though I do think it is, I said it was fun and fluffy. I do think it is still fun and fluffy. But if you're actually going on a table, you are not taking the assassin detachment. You're just not. It's so bad. It's so bad, guys. Oh, so yeah. So that if anything needed errata, it was that. But hey, maybe it'll get some love. Maybe it'll get some love in the MFM. Maybe it'll get some love in the MFM. All right, index card errata. All right, this is a big document. Let's see if I can browse through it relatively quickly. You could have removed. I guess technically the Astra Militarum Codex is not out yet, even though we do have an FAQ for it. All right. This is under Chaos Demons. Do the Greater Demon of Slaanesh, Greater Demon of Nurgle, Greater Demon of Khorne, or Greater Demon of Tzeentch abilities allow a unit that has one of those abilities to be set up closer than 9 inches to enemy models in a location that is not otherwise within my army's shadow of chaos using the Warp Rifts detachment rule? No. That's interesting. So, in the balanced data slate, we have this change to Chaos Demons. While an enemy unit is within your army's shadow of chaos, and or it is within 6 inches of one or more Bloodthirsters, Great Unclean Ones, Kairos Fate Weaver, all that. Each time that unit takes a Battle Shock test, subtract 1 from the test, and if that test is failed, the enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. And then we have the Demonic Incursion detachment. Again, we've got, if it is in the Shadow Chaos or then it can be set up anywhere that is within 6 inches horizontally away from all enemy models, including more than 9 inches. So okay. I think what the question here is, because I was really confused. Okay, but I think what the question here is I have a Keeper of Secrets, right? So I got my Keeper of Secrets. My Keeper of Secrets is in reserves in Deep Strike. Okay, that Keeper of Secrets is within its own Shadow of Chaos. So therefore, I should be able to put it within 6 inches of a target if, without it being in the shadow. No. Now, you can still hop. You can still put down a Keeper or Shalaxi or a Guo. You can still do that. And then you can put the Keeper Secrets within, well, I shouldn't say the Guo, but you know what I mean. You can still hop a Guo into a Guo or Rodigus into a Guo or whatever. You can still hop Shalaxi into a Keeper's Shadow. But you cannot just use that shadow to hop within 6 inches. That's not allowed. Yeah, that is blatantly like somebody. So again, every so often you get someone who wants to twist the rules to make their army more powerful. And I think that was it. Just that one FAQ. So yeah, so that's that. All right, Tau Empire. All right, Ethereals. Wow. So apparently Ethereals didn't have For the Greater Good. Now, to be fair, the idea that your ethereal is going to be spotting for one of your Tau Empire units, or that your tempo, or that you're like a battle suit's gonna spot for an ethereal, that is silly. But it's also just the idea that, you know, an ethereal wouldn't have for the greater good. And that's all we're getting here. That's all we're getting here. So yeah, ethereals now officially have for the greater good, which means they can spot, which is another use, because most of the time ethereals are just sitting. You're usually using them for backfield objective play. But if, for example, it's getting into the late game and you don't have any missions you need to do, you know, maybe you're playing a mission where your backfield doesn't matter anymore. You know, your opponent's already deployed everything, you know, out of reserve. So, you know, the battle lines are all drawn up, and then yeah, just, you know, maybe rush the ethereal up to the front line, and then it can spot for you. So it actually gives it something to do in the late game. But yeah, normally you wouldn't care about this. It's just funny. It's just funny that the ethereals didn't have for the greater good. All right, guard, Astra Militarum. Okay, siege regiment. Now again, I don't have the book. I don't have the money to pick up the Death Corps of Kree box, so the book isn't out. I will be getting the book. I'm a GSC player, which means I do want the guard book, so I can potentially use Brood Brothers, even though Brood Brothers are bad. But they've been trying to fix internal balance throughout all of 10th edition, so maybe Brood Brothers won't be bad at one point. We don't know. So, all right, Siege Regiment, Artillery Support, Creeping Barrage. So, again, didn't know what this did before, but I know roughly that this is the one where you've got a couple of different ways that you can have a imagined back line of artillery bringing down fire in front of your army to affect your opponent's army. That's what this was for. That's what this regiment is all about. It does not actually buff your artillery pieces on the board, which is a good thing. Sorry, guard players, but you know, indirect needs to have its specific role of targeting hiding units. It should not be being used to try to take out your opponent's army without actually engaging with them. That is, unfortunately, that's just the way 40k plays. That's how the role indirect needs to be fielding. Now, whether or not they'll ever come up with a proper role for aircraft or faction terrain, I have no freaking clue on that one. But because I'm not even sure what I would do there either. I know what they're currently trying to do in AOS 4 for faction terrain, and everyone's response has basically been, thanks, I hate it. Don't want to make too much noise, sorry. I often crunch up my bottles. All right, so roll 1d6 for each enemy unit that is more than 12 inches away from every model from your army that is on the battlefield. On a 5-up until the end of the battle round, that unit is shaken. While a unit is shaken, subtract 2 inches from its move characteristic and subtract 2 from charge rolls made for it. The maximum number of units that can be shaken by this rule in each battle round depends on the battle sizes shown below. So Art of War was actually talking about this change because they had this all previewed. So basically what this means is you have a number of units you're allowed to affect with your bombardment based on the battle size. Okay. I don't remember I have no clue what it is. But let's say it's 3. Let's say in a Strike Force game, you get to pick 3 units to be affected by your bombardments. So what this one is going to be is you pick the first unit to roll for, then you roll the die. Okay, it didn't get it. So you pick the next unit, roll it. Okay, that one is shaken, so that's 1. And then you keep doing that until you get 3. So you're going to want to pick the units in the order that they are most important for you to pin them. So, because this is probably the one you're going to be wanting to use the most, especially in the early game. So So make sure you are prioritizing the targets. But this, of course, could potentially be one of those ones where like you just don't get the full value out of it. And unfortunately, yeah. But I don't know. I'm not sure. Like I kind of wish that they just let you shake them, but shaken is a very, very powerful rule, and you do still have your basilisks. All right, Recon Element Master of Camouflage. Astra Militarum Walker and Regiment models from your army have the benefit of cover. While such a model has the benefit of cover for any other reason, because it is wholly within a ruin, improve save characteristic of the model. Because remember, cover is determined model by model. So there are times when your entire unit is going to get cover. So for example, the rule for ruins is if your opponent cannot see your entire unit because of the ruin, you get cover. But what happens when you actually take and assign a wound is you assign a wound to a model and then you determine whether or not that model has cover. So, but yeah, so that is just cleaning up the rules there. All right, Military Tempestus, they are still deep strike. Everyone who was upset that they took deep strike away from Scions, they're still there. They are no longer regiment though, or at least the command squad. The command squad is no longer regiment. So command squad cannot issue orders to itself. Add the bolt gun weapon profile and the range characteristic for Def Corps Krieg, because I think the Def Corps champions can still wield them. Fourth bullet point, any number of Def Corps Watchmasters can replace here's bolt gun. Yep. Catherkin range weapon, supercharged BS2 3+. So they must not have had them set up properly for Catherkin because Catherkin, I believe, are 3+ on all of their profiles. Again, signs are deep strike still. Again, for some reason, the plasma pistol was not recorded at 3+. Probably just copy pasta error. Servo strike ability. When this unit is settled on the battlefield using the deep strike ability, the Tempestus Aquilon can shoot with its sentry weapon, its sentry flamer, sentry grenade launcher, or sentry hotshot volley gun. So I can't remember which. I think there's one of the sentry weapons you don't gain access to. Or is it just specifying that you can? Again, just cleaning things up. Sentry can shoot with its sentry weapon, its sentry flamer, sentry grenade launcher, or sentry servo shot volley gun. Did they just remove as if it was your shooting face? I think they just removed as if it's your shooting phase. So I wonder what the purpose behind that, or if there's probably a rule there, like it's something you can do during your shooting phase, that they don't want you to have access to. Pistol, again, copy pasta. Ogrim Bodyguards have a character keyword now. That kind of sucked. Okay. Last pistol. Oh, Yeah, there was a last pistol was 48-inch range. I heard about that one. While the fire coordinator model is on the battlefield, each time a heavy weapon gunner model is destroyed. Man, it really does feel like it's just the 40K streams, where the 40K streams might as well just be subtitled Z has allergies. All right. So yeah, so you have to have your fire coordinator on the battlefield. Subtract 2 from charge rolls made for the basilisk, and they must have had a mistake there. Either that, or maybe they also had advances and they just want to change it to charge rolls. All right, FAQ. When using Creeping Barrage ability, how do you resolve the maximum number of units that can be shaken? You roll 1d6 for each enemy unit that is more than 12 inches away from every model from your army that is on the battlefield, in an order of your choosing, one at a time. Once the maximum number of enemy units for the battle size has been shaken, stop rolling for any additional units. So exactly how I said that it would be used. Although, again, to be fair, I got that from AOW. So Art of War, I was watching Art of War talking about the Guard Codex. So when an Ogren bodyguard joins a Militarum Tempestus command squad, can that unit set up using the Deep Strike ability? No, as the Ogren and bodyguard model does not have the Deep Strike ability. Again, this is just how the keyword system works when it comes to Deep Strike and Scout and Infiltrate. Every model has to have Deep Strike, Scout, or Infiltrate in order to use those roles. If you set them up in a vehicle, then they also get the Scout, if you set them up in a dedicated transport, they also get Scout or Infiltrate. You usually can't Deep Strike a dedicated transport. There are exceptions, such as, like, I think the Corvus Black Star, I think. All right. Space Marines. Add the new subheader and bullet point. Death Watch. Your army can. Let's see if you're. By the way, here's that rule again. If your army includes one or more Black Templars unit, it cannot include any Adeptus. Oh, okay, no, that's not saying. Add new subheader and bullet points. Your army can include Adeptus Astartes Death Watch units, but it cannot include any Adeptus Astartes units drawn from any other chapter. With the exception of Kill Team Cassius, see Legends Agents of the Imperium, your army cannot include any Agents of the Imperium Death Watch units. Your army cannot include any of the following units: Assault Squad with jump packs, Attack Bike Squad, Devastator Squad, Landspeeder Storm, Relic Terminator Squad, Scout Bike Squad, Scout Sniper Squad, Tactical Squad, Terminator Assault Squad, Terminator Squad! Okay, so that's basically, we're just adding Death Watch in to the Space Marine chapter's army roll. That's all we're doing so far. Yep, that's all we're doing. That makes life easy there. All right, MFM. Now, we're going to get to Astra Militarum. We're going to get to Guard. I'm not going to consider any of these things to be nerfs, because we got a whole new codex, whole new rules, whole new detachments to play with. So until we actually see how all of the rules interact on the battlefield, because a lot of units in the codex have been changed. Some of them stayed the same, but we're going to see red and green. But that's all from the back of the rule sheet, or the back sheet of the codex for Astra Militarum. I can talk. Hey, I can. So we got no changes here, no changes to Custodes, no changes to Mechanicus, none to Titanicus. Oh, zoom out so we can do it quicker. All right, here's AM. Note. Okay, they've actually currently got it broken. Okay, so this is nice because this actually allows. So one of the things I've mentioned this actually before when talking about Votann and the myths around Votann's launch. In general, tournaments do not allow you to have access to a codex that is not for sale yet. The Astra Militarum Codex is not for sale. You can only buy the Deathcore Krieg launch box, and then you get the Astra Militarum Codex. In the past, in general, most tournaments, when that is the case, when you've got basically a special edition codex that you get in a launch box, they do not let you use that codex in a they do not let you use that codex in the tournament. I don't know how LVO ruled, but in general, you're not allowed to use codexes that come from launch boxes. You have to wait until the codex is available for sale by itself from Games Workshop. So Games Workshop, knowing this, has kept the index rules for Astra Militarum available. And then we've also got all of the codex rules. And again, I'm not going to go through these. These are not nerfs. These are not buffs. These are what GW is currently thinking the actual points costs of these units in the Astra Militarum Codex should be based on the current meta. Or as close to the current meta as when they came up with these points, to be fair. So when you see these red, that means that, like we can go back and forth here. So like, for example, Ursula Creed is 55 points. Okay. So, oh, they raised her 10 points. They nerfed Ursula Creed. Except she can now do an order to a third unit. So they changed Ursula Creed's datasheet, and they're saying that that new datasheet is worth 65 points. So I do not consider these to be any kind of points or buffs. The points below allow players to enjoy Codex Astra Militarum in non-tournament settings. So here's GW's actually, they've actually said put their piece there. They've actually said their piece. Until the full release of this codex, players should continue to use Index Astra Militarum points and rules for tournaments and other similar events. So basically, GW has come out in this document and said what tournaments are already doing, or what the vast majority of tournaments are already doing. They have sided with those tournaments, and they have basically said, these rules are for when the codex comes out. If you have the codex and you want to play in your friendly local game store, then these are the points costs you can use, and these should be balanced. But if you are, or at least they're what GW thinks is balanced. But if you're playing in a tournament, this is what you use. And we do still have some Forge World here. So it's nice. We've kept the Cyclops, which is great because the Cyclops is a potentially fun little mission piece to have running around. And we have one aircraft. We have one Astra Militarum aircraft from Forge World is still around. Everything else has gone to Legends. Oh, that's just, unfortunately, GW is trying to phase out. They're trying to phase out fine cast resin for anything but their specialist games. So I personally think they should get rid of it altogether. But people think GW is this massive company. They're not. They do all of their production in Nottingham. They have been expanding their production facilities, but that doesn't change the fact that, there's only so much plastic they can put out. All right, back to zoomed out. Oh. Okay, Tank Busters are a new model. or a new unit, I should say. And with the new unit and the new rules, GW is saying they should be 120 points for 6 models. So, well, we'll have to see. We will have to see if that if players are taking tank busters at 160 points. And that's it. Those are our changes. One of the reasons, that's the other reason I didn't want to do a full Reddit, is because I knew there weren't going to actually be that many changes. So yeah. So we got a buff to Chaos Demons. So they nerfed Chaos Demons and then they just gave them a buff. They just gave them a really big buff. Okay. We've got some weird stuff going on with Dark Angels. Again, Tau got nerfed and then they got buffed again. They did flat out buff Ravenwing Black Knights and Ravenwing Command Squad. This is just a flat out buff. I'm pretty sure. Unless at some point they had like this with Lance or something that I missed here, but again, unfortunately I don't have. But yeah, so, and yeah, they probably, like I said, I still think Star Shatter is really good. I still think it's a very good detachment. 2 CP, I don't think either of these are particularly worth it for 2 CP. I think this is perfectly fine. This is great. This is still a fantastic. A 1 CP reactive move is always money in my opinion. Yeah, it's a little bit trickier because, you know, vehicles don't have as much room to move. But again, a lot of times you're going to be backing away from charges. You're going to be backing up out of melter range. And yeah, it's not as reliable, but again, it's 1 CP. So 1 CP, I'm a firm believer. Reactive move, random reactive move, 1 CP is fine. 1 CP is absolutely fine. That is money. Anytime it's a 2 CP random reactive move, that is too much. But 2 CP for a flat reactive move, like flat 6 inches, that's also money. So that's one of the few times I think a stratagem is worth 2 CP is when it is that kind of flat reactive move. 2 CP for +1 to wound, 2 CP for new transhuman. You've already got a lot of firepower on your hands. Necron's already hit very hard. So you probably won't need to spend this. So this will probably just be your pocket strat. Like, you know, basically, or I shouldn't say your pocket strat. This will be, you look at what the enemy units you have to take out, and basically you just budget in your head. It's like, crap. He's got a tyrant, or he took a he took a knight tyrant, or he took a knight castellan. So I really need to bring that down. So I'm going to spend the 2 CP, and you just budget it. Same thing with this one. If you know you need to step out and do something, and you know you need this to trade up, then you do the 2 CP to trade up. So this is just something you're just going to have to budget it. But yeah, I still think this is a good detachment. I still think this is a perfectly good detachment. I still think Necrons are perfectly fine. I do not anticipate Necrons having all that much trouble bringing home tournament wins and getting to top tables. So yeah, this is the big news. This is the big deal. And then again, having the actual rules, the actual FAQs and points cost for Codex Astra Militarum, that's nice, but I'm not the one breaking that. Hell, I'm not the one breaking this because I'm a day late because I had such a bad migraine yesterday. So I'm not breaking this either, but like this one, we already knew from all of the people who got review copies of Codex Astra Militarum that, apparently GDUP sent this with all the review copies. So they were all already telling us, hey, don't worry, Scions still have Deep Strike. hey, don't worry, the demolition team is not 35 points. So you're not paying 35 points for a massive amount of mortal wounds, you know. So we already knew all of that. But yeah. And then most of the rest of this is mostly just fixing things. And again, I don't know if tank busters are okay at 130. I honestly don't know. I'd have to look at the G. I seem to recall them looking really good when I actually did the coverage. Oh, we could do that real quick. Let's take a look. I do want to move on to the PoE stuff, but we can still take a look at tank busters real quick. All right, so here's our tank busters. All right. So these are now 120 for 6. So GW is saying these are 20 points a model. All right, so for 20 points a model, you get 2 wound, toughness 5 infantry with a 4-up save. So the body is roughly in the 20 points per model range. Probably needs to be a little bit lower just on the body. We obviously see a lot of Space Marines that are, you know, in the 16, 18 point range. You know, toughness 5 definitely does help quite a bit, but there is a huge difference between 4-up and 3-up. You know, there is quite a bit of difference between that. But if if you know, 20 points a model, if you've got a good damage output, then I am perfectly fine with that. Hey, it was listed at 120 originally. So apparently in the MFM they'd moved them, put them down to 90 at some point. Oh, I'm willing to bet it was 90 points for the original Tank Buxton models. So yeah, so this isn't a nerf at all. This is not a nerf at all. This is what they were set at when they gave us the new data sheet. Obviously, for like, you're not taking, I'm sorry, you're not taking Tank Busters for this profile. You're just not. Okay, so you got six models. The boss knob has 2 rocket pistols, and the rest have rocket launches. And then one of them can have the pulse rocket the pulse rocket. Okay, so come on, 2 shots hitting on 5s, and then 5d3 shots, probably 4d3 shots hitting on 5s at strength 9, AP -2, damage 3. You're not taking these for the shooting. Okay. Now, you do get +1 to hit, but then that just goes to 4. That just takes us to 4. So 2 shots hitting on 4s, you know, and then 43 shots. I should try to say that a little slower because it sounds like I'm saying 43 shots, which 43 shots for orcs is not unreasonable. But 4 D3 shots, you know, at hitting on 4s at strength 9, AP -2, damage 3. Yeah. This is not why you're taking those. Now, the +1 to wound does definitely help. So you can take out like some light vehicles with this. You can take out some light vehicles. You can take out some smaller monsters. Like, I wouldn't want one of these to be, I wouldn't want to expose like a Psychophage to one of these. Or, you know, like a single Carnifex. I wouldn't want to do that. In melee, of course, this is where, you know, you've got that Smash Hammer, which you're probably going to take on the boss instead of the 2 shots here. And then you've got some close combat and Choppa. But this is actually the reason you take this. You got the bomb squig. So twice per battle, after this unit ends a normal move, you can select one enemy unit within 12 inches of it and roll 1d6. On a 2-up, that enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. And then they do have grenades. So these are going to be doing chip damage to vehicles. As you march them up the board, you're going to be doing chip damage to vehicles. And then you're going to finish off the vehicle with like a d3 mortals in it. And you're basically relying on your opponent to know you're relying on your opponent to look at this profile and go, oh yeah, the tank busters aren't a threat. Because most of the time they're not going to be. But then once you've spent both of these bomb squigs, then yeah, then they cease being any useful except maybe as a grenade, and then you're using them to try to hold objectives and tap objectives. Maybe get a little bit of melee in. You've got the Smash Hammer. Smash Hammer is pretty decent for taking out some, again, light vehicles or monsters in melee. And then you get the Pulse Rocket once per battle. When the bear's unit is selected to shoot in your shooting phase, the bear can use its Pulse Rocket. If it does, until the end of the phase, improve the strength and armor penetration characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by models in this bear's unit by 1. So basically, when you finally do get a good line of sight off, you fire one of these to get more strength and AP if you're trying to take down a bigger target. But yeah, you might even want to just skip and just stick with the rocket launcher. But because like I said, you're mostly bringing these in to just do some chip damage, be bodies on the board, and get these D3 mortals off. That's probably what you take these. I think they probably should be cheaper. I think they're fine. I think they're fine at 120. But I can see these going down to 110. I could see these going down to 100, honestly. 100 for 6 models at that profile with this kind of chip damage. Yeah, I could see that. I think that's what you're going to need in order for orc players to really, I think these are good. But again, one thing to point out, we do have the Tactical Brigade now, and I think that this is potentially a good unit in Tactical Brigade. Potentially. I'd have to see it on the board some. All right, so that's it. That's our balance changes. Again, this wasn't a nerf. This is just the old tank busters were 90 points. The new tank busters are 120 points. Like that's literally what was on the data sheet. Necrons did get nerfed. Again, I think they're fine. Like, I don't think I find it hard to say that they were overly nerfed because of how good Star Shatter is. But at the same time, I don't think Star Shatter needed nerfed that badly. Because again, it's right now it is in the current meta. And again, take this with a grain of salt because the current meta is less than a month old. Star Shatter is a terror on midboard where people don't know how to protect their units. On top tables, Star Shatter is not really bringing in the results. You're still honestly probably better off with Hypercrypt or even Awakened Dynasty. So, did it need to be nerfed as much as it did? Probably not. Is it terrible now that it's been nerfed? No, it really isn't. It's still a good detachment. I think people are still going to be able to get some success with it. I think you probably do want to make sure you're balancing out your list a lot more, just because I think the main weakness Star Shatter has is mission play. So you're going to need to make sure you're balancing out your list, because I think right now a lot of people are taking Star Shatter with the whole idea of, I'm going to wipe out my opponent and then I'm going to score. You're going to keep your opponent off of objectives, and then you're going to use mission play and then score. So that's probably what you want. So you're going to need to have some mission play tools in your toolbox in a Star Shatter arsenal. And the good news is those mission play tools do still get +1 to hit against objectives. But yeah. So I think that's where I'm going to leave things now. I think I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to jump on the other channel, like I said in my announcement. And we're going to look at the full patch notes for patch 0.11 for Path of Exile 2. And if you're a 40k player, I really do recommend Path of Exile. Especially if you're the kind of 40k player that really likes this kind of minutia, really likes like the deep dive in, trying to get like every ounce of power out of your army list. I really do think that you will get that same kind of itch scratched from Path of Exile and Path of Exile 2, because those are games that reward a great deal of forethought. Those are games that reward a lot of forethought. So yeah. So and of course, if you really like grimdark settings, yeah, especially in PoE 2, things have gotten very dark. It is a very dark fantasy setting. So I do hope you'll join me over there. If not, thank you so much for watching. I've been Divine Erdrick,